Hey Jacob, how you doing?
Hey, there he is. Yeah, good mate. How you going?
Yeah, very, very well. All good. I think we said this before, but yeah, I'm enjoying doing these. I'm enjoying the feedback, the reaction, and I'm also enjoying. So, for those who don't know, we turn each of these conversations into a blog post over on the Substack, which is platforming community, and I'm enjoying seeing kind of the readership go up there, but also just generally the kind of the feedback and comments we're getting from that, and yeah, it's been a really fun way to kind of share our expertise and kind of educate, hopefully, what's in our heads, out of our heads. Yeah,
That's it. No, I mean, it's lovely. The support's going well. Actually, that's a really good point. It's a good open point of conversation. If there's anything that people particularly have thoughts on that they would like our kind of input in, if we've had those experiences, and if we haven't, we can go and speak to some wonderful people who probably have. So do feel free to write those in if you particularly want to chat about us to chat about a specific topic. Could even might even reach out and ask for your input. It would be awesome. But yeah, no, I'm loving it. It's great. It's nice to chat about something you're passionate about as well.
absolutely.
Having that kind of time. The one bit I'm not enjoying is the technology, as we've been trying to experience, rushing to get this up and ready for go live within things. Hence why I'm on my laptop video camera today, and not the actual fancy snazzy one that is supposed to be linked up in all wondrous ways. But you said you'd help me with that next week, Pete, so we can make it work.
We'll work it out.
I need a support community for Sony, for Sony cameras, so I can go in and ask them rather than get lost in their network. Anyway, sorry, by the by, distraction.
No worries. So today we are chatting about why it's important for a community or for kind of any organization or business to kind of have a fairly clear outline of what their mission and what their manifesto are. And this is really important. And Jacob, often at the start of projects, you're doing some strategy work. Somebody will approach us and they'll be, look, we really need to improve conversion on our whatever it is. And when you peel back the layers, within an hour of talking to someone, before you realize it, you've actually realized they maybe haven't thought through the bigger picture stuff. And sometimes it can feel a little bit like being someone's therapist, because you're peeling away layers to actually find out what kind of the core of the problem is. And often, and I hope this isn't out of line, often people don't know what their business is and what it stands for. And the issue isn't actually conversion rates on landing pages. It's much bigger than that. And actually it's kind of more an identity crisis often. And from there, then you can then kind of make out various paths and solutions and fixes and whatnot.
How do things look under the hood, essentially? That side of things. And within a creative project as well, it is very, very common that even as a design team, as we're moving through the design process, we're at a blocker. We just don't know how to proceed from here. We're getting stuck, getting caught up in our own thing. And that so often comes down from an act sort of, well, first of all, like cognition. It's just nice to get and put things on paper. But a lot of it comes down to context. Is there not enough context or provision of a problem or the goals or what it is we're striving to achieve? It's why often the sites that just look pretty sort of fail. And again, like as you said, Pete, it echoes into community. Be like, why are we not getting traction? Why is it not easy to spark communications, conversations over a specific thing? So having that under the hood with the proper engine in place and the mechanics. I shouldn't have gone down this metaphor route, because you suddenly realise how bad I am understanding cars. There's an engine. Anyway, that kind of context. So Pete, you've actually just been doing this internally for Steadfast, which is great. We had our team get together and things, and you and Rachel had been really working through this. So let's sort of talk into it really, and the importance kind of in and around it. So just give us a bit of an overview of the different areas of sort of mission and manifesto and things like that in a nutshell.
Yes. So it's worth stating that people use the words vision, mission, manifesto kind of interchangeably, but I'm just going to define them what we're going to use them as today. So these are kind of what we use. So mission is the big thing. I've got my notes here. So mission is the big thing you want to do. So like, what is the thing that you want your community or your business to do. And we're not talking about, at this point, company objectives. We're not talking about KPIs. We're not talking about, the nitty gritty. What's the big thing? What's the big idea? So, for instance, your community might all be about how do we gather people to stop trees being cut down in the rainforest, right? But the big idea is actually, how do we affect climate change? How do we do this? It's less about, what you're doing. And then your manifesto is what you're doing and why you're doing it. So you've got your mission, which is what's the really big thing you want to solve? So, what's that big thing? And then the manifesto is what are you going to do and why are you going to do it like that? And it's quite important to define those two things separately, because one is, a thing which is kind of overshadows it all. And then the manifesto is a thing that you'll be regularly updating. So actually right now, the correct manifesto for Steadfast is this, but it might be in 3 years that the correct manifesto is this. Where ideally our mission should last a good 10 years because our mission shouldn't change. So for instance, I won't go into it. Oh no, let's go into it because we've worked on it really hard recently and it's probably worth
go for it.
It'll give some more context. So I've got my notes here. So our one-liner, just to give some context, is crafting bespoke platforms that enable community-led brands to grow and thrive. And then our mission, which is kind of our future, what we want to happen in the future is this. When people gather, we expect growth. We exist to rekindle the art of gathering, building community and creating sustainable commerce. For too long, we've seen consumerism push brands into unsustainable growth models, so we've taken responsibility to provide an alternative. Our platforms and people provide the tools for leaders to build thriving businesses around their community. So there, in our mission, we've kind of set out this big goal. We personally believe that the idea of just throwing money at someone like Meta to grow your business is unsustainable and actually isn't good for the planet. We want to create, sustainable growth models. And we believe community is the answer to that. So our mission is we want to help facilitate that. Now, that could look like we're a room of consultants who advise on community. It could look like we're a bunch of facilitators. But we haven't gone into the detail there because this is our mission. This is the big thing we want to do, not how we want to do it. So then going on to our manifesto kind of goes on to how we want to achieve that. So our manifesto, we develop platforms and people. Steadfast Collective believes that people thrive when gathered in community, that regenerative places, spaces, and platforms are where communities grow. Our team crafts sustainable, bespoke platforms that gather community-led brands globally to create social and economic value. We prioritize joy in every decision, treating people with integrity rather than a resource and equipping them for milestones in their lives. Whether the internet, our people, or our planet, Steadfast Collective will always leave it better than we found it. And in this point in our manifesto, we're talking about, well, what do we do and how do we do it? And it's speaking to the mission that we want to see and achieve.
Cool. That's it. We're wrapped up. Thanks, everybody. That's us.
This was just 10 minutes of me talking about us. No, but in all seriousness. So if you are building out that community, you may think, oh, our big mission is to be driving as a community. We're around a SaaS business or whatever you are. Our big mission is to drive sales and help the support team. Well, no, not really. That would sit more in your manifesto and your goals, where your mission is to create whatever it is. And it's this bigger picture thinking, not the detail of what and why we're doing it.
So that's a really good example of our side of things, because what I know for us is it allows our entire team to be united into decision making, the actions we take, and the processes that we run all have a connection into our mission and manifesto. So the decisions are aligned. And also our team are brilliant. If there's a consideration that we're trying to take, actually it doesn't align, one of our team will pop up and say, hey, isn't this against what we're doing? Which is super, because it just keeps everyone on the same kind of level. So obviously that's us. Within things, and we work and support with communities, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
But are there, how can we apply this to a community? Is there an example community or someone that you can think of,
Yeah.
who is doing this well?
I've made a note here of Strava. So I use Strava all the time to track my runs and
Okay.
playing football and whatnot. And their mission kind of sums up this bigger picture idea. Their mission is to be the leading platform for movement. So it's not about we want to be, an app on the App Store that does this and this. It's just we want to be a platform for movement. Now that could be a number of different things, number of different ways, but it's all about the leading platform for movement. And what they want to do is they kind of want to create this space. But their mission is what underpins it all. And I think Strava do a really good job of being true to themselves. They know who their target audience is. They know who they're trying to reach. But they haven't restricted themselves by having a mission which is too small. When we were chatting with Steve, someone who kind of helps us with a lot of this stuff, and we were chatting about mission, the idea was kind of, how do you make it bigger? Like, make it bigger. Like, what you're thinking is too small, make it bigger. Like, if you weren't here and the business was still running in 20, 30 years time, what is still something in the future that we could be achieving? And the idea of kind of making it bigger is a lot around that. So I think Strava do a great job of kind of laying out their kind of cards on the table and what they want to achieve in terms of their mission.
Nice. I actually think it's good at this. In terms of that little shout out, so Steve Cross, would be an amazing person to talk to. Actually, if there is a community or someone listening to this, I would highly recommend that you have a chat with Steve Cross, who will really support this creation. But also in terms of how to action that, you might have the impacts you want at the top. What's that table called that we do, Pete? Do you remember off the top of your head?
No, Steve's got lots of different
he's got
principles
lots of
and
different
tools.
methodologies and things, but essentially how you might have that main manifesto, the main impact or goals that you want to achieve, and then how to actually break that down into tangible things to approach. Steve Cross would definitely be a fantastic man to talk to there. But no, that's really interesting about Strava. Like, how do you, just wondering, how do you reckon they like landed on that? What was it? What was their mission again?
Be the leading platform for movement.
For movement. Like, how would you get to that as a point of discovery? You say about thinking bigger. Are there ways that can be thought about actually taking that on? Because I can imagine from a community, this needs to be a stakeholder wide kind of belief and agreement, which then needs to be company wide, I suppose, doesn't it?
Why do you think they didn't use the word sport?
Yeah, I know. It was that's obviously very niche.
It's obviously an intentional decision to use the word movement instead of sport. But that's because I think not everyone thinks of themselves as an athlete who plays sport. They might just be tracking a walk. Where I think once you start getting into Strava, the more about it, they use terminology like that you're an athlete, which they really love. But it's obviously an intentional thing where they wanted to make it bigger and not so pointy in that terminology around movement.
So if a community or brand is looking to bring in sort of the mission manifesto from there, it's more looking at what's the kind of the overarching kind of problem we want to support here. What is it we understand of our target audience of not just we like Peloton. We want to help people, allow people to cycle indoors. Obviously, that is very weak and very specific into what it is. So it's really taking that understanding of who your audience is then as well, as well as your grand schemes.
Nice. In terms of in terms of someone who's trying to think about their mission and manifesto, it's likely you've probably got something on the back of a napkin or somewhere in a dusty notes document, somewhere where you kind of first kicked off and you've got something. But it's always worth revisiting to make sure it still makes sense for you. We found that the mission and manifesto we had in place for the first 9-10 years of Steadfast no longer made sense and needed revisiting for the next 9-10 years. So I think for us, it was, again, I've got some notes here just to kind of make sure I try and stay somewhat on task here. So deciding on a mission and manifesto, first of all, you want to identify what is the big thing in the world you want to change. Like what matters to you. Now, you might be the community manager for a business that you don't run and is not your IP, but it's still important that you care. So if it's around climate change, whether it's around software, whether it's around developer relationships, whatever it is, what is the big thing that you as a community care about and can champion behind? And it's worth noting that we know that through our research on the report, we know that, if you are clear in your mission manifesto, what you do and don't believe in, people are more likely to get behind you. We know that the Gen Z folk care so much about a brand's kind of corporate responsibility and their mission and value. So having that is really important. So identify the big change or problem you want to do. And then it's going around, okay, we've got a couple more points here. So know your audience, like who are you targeting? So you've got your big idea and then you're working on how you're going to deliver this big idea, how you actually are going to make the impact. Well, who are you making it for? Are you trying to have everybody applicable for your community or your kind of business? Or are you targeting a particular gender or a particular county, country, age? What are you targeting? Interest groups. And again, that's really important that you can narrow down on that, because that will feed into your manifesto and ultimately the sort of products you achieve. And then again, it's around, okay, plan for this to be a document which is updated regularly. It's not going to be something which is set in stone forever. It will need to adjust. And as your business adjusts, it will need to adjust along with it. Every community has a business behind it somewhere, whether or not they're the ones funding it or whether the community is a business in itself. And the business objectives will guide what you're doing here, which then kind of leads us on to, it needs to align with your business strategy, right? We've chatted about this time and time again on these platform and community lives, but it's really important that what you're doing in your community does align with what your business is. So it's obvious that your mission and manifesto as a community needs to align to that of the business. And that's when you said earlier, you need the right people in the room. Otherwise, you're just creating this weird little silo your community is going to live in. And you can have the most beautifully worded mission and manifesto, but ultimately, if you're the only one who knows it and has input on it, no one's going to care, right?
That as a full company-wide buy-in from that, like, I can imagine is quite hard for grander communities.
Yeah.
And for large communities, someone small, or if you're starting up your own kind of micro community and it's growing from there, where you are a decision maker in it, you often very much believe in your community wholeheartedly. Actually, It's going to be much easier for you to be able to put that together. Again, probably not I wouldn't recommend in silo as well. At least get some of your ambassadors on board and things like that. But in terms of a larger kind of company and the belief in this, how might you position we've touched upon obviously the benefits of it and things like that. But again, even when you put the benefits together to large scale stakeholders, what can you kind of sum up and be like, this is why we should have a mission and manifesto for our community? Why, for those kind of people?
So back in April, May time, when I was at the CMX conference in California, I heard Aaron from Peloton speak, talking in Peloton. And he was on a panel talking about how to gain internal commitment for your community. And he said, I'm quoting these words, "It's really important to be able to quickly articulate what your community does and why it exists, celebrating your wins and making it clear what you're doing and making sure people are aware of it." And I think a lot of that comes back to this concept, which is in a book called something I can't remember. I will remember it for next week. But it's
we'll add it. Let's make sure we get that link and we'll pop it into the article that comes out of this as well.
Yes.
So
yes.
Read the article.
Yeah. But it's the idea of having a chief repeating officer. So as managing director, and founder at Steadfast, I'm aware that a lot of my job is to repeat myself over and over again. Not, boring stuff, important stuff, mission, values, reasons why we're doing this, because people, are very busy. People have very short attention spans. And ultimately, you need people to care. You really need people to have buy-in and care. And a lot of what my job is, and a lot of what any leader's job is, whether you're leading a community, a business, whatever, is to be that chief repeating officer. And it's not just articulating the same words in the same way. It's articulating things in different ways. So, for instance, sometimes at our company retreats, when we gather twice a year, I will do some storytelling. Like, so at the last one, I did a history of basically my career and where Steadfast was kind of born from. But it was the same sort of message that I would have given 12 months ago about where we want Steadfast to go, just in a different kind of style, because that will appeal to different people. And again, having that kind of chief repeating officer role is really important. And yeah.
So imagine now, Pete, you hadn't come up with this mission and manifesto.
Yeah.
And I had come up with this mission manifesto. I suppose that still ties into the idea of the chief repeating officer, because if higher ups or stakeholders aren't getting involved in this creation, it's a little bit where I suppose you need to be bold in your dedication to it. So if it's more of a community manager or the community management team putting this together, and then there will be a point if you then start promoting this and pushing this, and then senior leadership team or top down start asking questions that go against it, and you go, no, it's not against our mission manifesto, you're kind of then forcing them to shift into it. Would you say that that's a bit too much of maybe a harsh approach to take? But it's kind of like you're saying this is important to me and to the team.
Yeah,
we're going to push it. Do you think that's a bit too forceful?
I think that's an interesting approach. And I saw this incredible tidbit kind of on the same sort of lines that somebody was asking a similar question on the CMX Slack community group, right? Around how do you get buy-in from higher ups, essentially. And Beth, who is the community director at CMX, I'm pretty sure it's Beth, shared this, which I thought was incredible. As soon as I read it, I was like, that's genius. I need to share this. She creates a Google Doc for every senior stakeholder, explains what the community is, why it's important, how it's relevant for them and their department, and how they can get involved. So that way, rather than being like, here's a generic, 20-page doc about everything about the community, you go, no, these are the bits as head of sales you care about. We know that X number of people who come through here do X. We know, and you can just reel it out. And I'm like, that is genius. Because as someone who is running support versus, say, a product manager or an MD or an FD, they all care for different things of what you're doing. So just tell them the things they care about. And it's a lot about, making it easy. It's good hospitality, right? It's good community management shit. That's a fun word. But I love the idea of making these docs like that. I was like, that's so good. I loved it so much.
It's like your little black book of notes on your senior team. Have been like, I know that they like this thing, and they've their daughter plays tennis. Let's ask how they're doing. I mean, not as creepy. No, as
very
that.
similar, but
it is that kind of Rolodex kind of approach, isn't it?
Exactly. For example, on our senior management team, I know that Andre would prefer really clear written communication. You would probably rather meet in person, talk about it over a beer. And if not, you'd rather a Loom about it, like a video about it. And I know people have different styles, and it's about appealing to that. So your FD is going to care about bottom line stuff. They're going to be like, great, that mission and manifesto has loads of fluffy words in it. That's lovely. But actually, how does that affect our bottom line? Where you're, head of brand, they are going to care about wordsmithing that thing and ensuring it sounds like it should sound. And it's just really interesting how you can appeal to different senior stakeholders in different ways, but give them a document that appeals just to them. I thought it was genius.
No, I love that. That's what a brilliant way to bring sort of to help get senior team to buy in. Fantastic.
For sure. And so, again, it kind of comes back to as your job as the chief repeating officer. You're not repeating stuff the same way over and over again. You can, the irony of me saying that twice is incredible, is the fact that you can say it in different ways to different people, but it's still your role.
So overarching, Pete, quick line mission and manifesto. What
Yep.
is it? Why do we want it? And we'll wrap up.
Great. Mission, what's the big thing you want to see in the world? Manifesto, how are you going to do it and why are you going to do it? Why does it matter? Because without those guiding stars, those guiding lights, North Star, whatever you want to call it, you're making decisions, you know, left, right, and center, and there's no fixed point. By having a fixed point, everyone can agree on that fixed point of what you're doing, where you're aiming, and what you care for. And I think it's really important.
Amazing. Well, I think let's bring it to a close here. Do take a look at the article. We'll put some links and things in there. I do like chatting community over a beer. You're absolutely right, Pete, which I get to do with some amazing community people at our digital community leaders dinners as well. So yeah. we'll pop a link in that information, which is a group of about 12 or so amazing people who are passionate for community, get together for a lovely dinner. And we just have open conversation. So do have a keep an eye on that as well. Thanks for running us through that, Pete. Really great. And also just nice to share a little about Steadfast, actually, within our mission and manifesto. But join us next week as well, 11 a.m. on LinkedIn and YouTube. We're loving these. Reach out if you've got anything that you'd love us to talk about and run through. But thanks very much.
Cheers, everyone. See you soon.